This is hour 2 of our 5-hour live stream celebrating the first anniversary of our work to rid the world of apostasy laws, like the death penalty for changing your mind about God. In this segment, I interview Maryam Namazie, one of the most well-known ex-Muslim activists in the world. We discuss her journey from refugee advocacy to being pushed out of that space and founding a movement for ex-Muslims. We discuss the internal struggles many activists face, the importance of humor amidst tragedy, and the chilling attack on Salman Rushdie in New York just a couple years ago. Maryam speaks candidly about the widespread cowardice that enables oppression and why our work demands and spreads courage. We also talk about how ex-Muslim advocacy benefits not just apostates, but Muslims too, since every Muslim is an apostate by some other Muslim's version of Islam. We discuss how some ex-Muslims fall into far-right narratives, citing figures like Sam Harris, Ayn Hirsi Ali, Tommy Robinson, and Douglas Murray, and dangerous ideas like even the babies are Hamas. Maryam breaks down the myth of a clash of civilizations, reframing it as a clash between civilized and uncivilized forces within all societies. We also discuss her conversation with Keenan Malik on the reality behind profiling and what the data really shows. This conversation challenged me to think more deeply about empathy and the forces promoting bigotry and hate. I think it'll do the same for you. Watch the rest of the series, sign the manifesto, and get involved. Links are in the description. Let's get into it. All right, we're back.
Hey.
Hi, Maryam, again.
Hi.
So, do you have particular ideas of where you'd like to start, or would you like me just to something? I'm interested in something.
Yeah, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Okay. This is sort of the chronological history, first kind of thing. I've been watching a lot of your interviews and stuff, and in one place you mentioned that you were asked, why have you become, or why did you choose to become an ambassador for ex-Muslims? And you answered by saying, well, initially you weren't that. You were doing activism along with the broader and more standard, like free speech groups or human rights activist, groups, and then you were pushed out of there. And you were pushed out. I don't want to be the one to explain why you were pushed out, or even why they would want such a thing. But basically, they forced you out, and so you still wanted to do the activism. So you said, "All right, we're doing this on our own for this category of people, since we're not being represented." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't really that way. It was, I did get pushed out from a lot of groups. As I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of refugee rights work for many decades. It is the most depressing, most heartbreaking work you can imagine. And I did refugee work for many decades, actually. I worked in the Sudan for 2 years with Ethiopian and Eritrean refugees. And I worked in Turkey with Iranian refugees, and of course in the US and the UK with various nationalities of refugees. And it just has become increasingly desperate and difficult for people to gain asylum because of the climate of criminalization and militarization against those who are really just seeking safety and a better life. And what I found was, when I was doing my refugee rights work, I worked with a lot of wonderful groups, really, who were defending the rights of refugees. But when I spoke about why refugees are fleeing, for example, why they're fleeing Iran, why they're fleeing Afghanistan, of course, part of it has to do with US militarism, but also it has to do with Islamism and the fact that the religious right are one of the reasons why refugees flee. That was considered racism, and I don't think they used the term Islamophobia then, but it was, because I'm talking about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But I was definitely kicked out for racism. And why the ex-Muslim thing started was because I and others got sick of being labeled Muslim all the time, in the sense of no matter where you went, the very fact that you have, for example, a Muslim name, or you come from countries that are ruled by Islamic laws, immediately you're labeled Muslim. And it does get quite frustrating that there is no recognition of the fact that we have free thinkers and atheists and secularists and socialists and, you know, so many others, other
Or blank
types of
slates,
beliefs.
people born yesterday.
Yeah. So and so it was, you know, this we wanted to say, look, we're not all Muslim, number one, and we don't all accept Islamic states. We don't all want Sharia law. We don't all love the burqa and the hijab. And it was sort of a challenge to multiculturalism, not as a beautiful lived experience, but as a social policy that divides and segregates people and gives them different and lesser rights based on where they supposedly come from or where they were born. And so this is something, discussions I had with Mina Ahadi, who started the German Ex-Muslim Council, in discussions with Giordano Bruno, who's a free thought, which is a free thought organization in Germany. And the idea that was discussed was there were women in Germany who came forward and said, I've had an abortion, as a way of breaking the taboo for women who had abortions and giving public faces to those women so that there was no more shame attached to it. And we thought, well, we could do the same thing, bring our faces and say, we have renounced Islam and we are ex-Muslims and we're not ashamed and there's nothing wrong with it. And there are many of us. And it's, in fact, we were having this discussion yesterday. We had a event for the Council of Ex-Muslims, and Taha Siddiqui, who's a Pakistani journalist who now lives in Paris, he started the Dissident Club. He was there, and we were talking about the ex-Muslim movement, because this month is our 17th year anniversary, and also 20th of June is World Refugee Day. So we were talking about how many ex-Muslims are in fact refugees, and also how this whole movement started. And I remember when we had our first event, there were very few ex-Muslims that were present in the hall. It was all white people, and people were saying, I think you're just making this up. It doesn't seem like there are any ex-Muslims around. And there was maybe 5 or 6 ex-Muslims hiding in the balconies up there so they couldn't be seen and not be photographed. And even when we had this poster saying, we have renounced Islam, it was very much people from the left, Iranian political backgrounds that were in the poster, and very, you know, nobody wanted to have their name and their face. And of course, now, 17 years on, you know, there is a tsunami of atheism. Ex-Muslim is a huge mass movement, really. And so, and I think a lot of it has to do with, of course, social media and the fact that we have been able to connect in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise. But it's progress in such a short time. So, you know, the end apostasy laws that you're dreaming of course, it can be a reality. Maybe ask me when I'm not so depressed and pessimistic. I have these ups and downs as an activist. And I'm now in that stage where I'm just like desperately depressed.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I wonder if it makes sense to talk about that. Maybe people don't even know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
A couple of 3 days ago, Israel attacked Iran.
Mm.
And of course,
Yeah.
we've had big thing going on for over a year, Israel Palestine, or 75 years.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very you know, to see how cheap human life is really is just very, very upsetting. Mm.
Yeah, and it's certain human lives, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you're the wrong kind of human, your rights and lives don't matter. So
yeah.
But let's talk about something nicer. And like apostasy laws of blasphemy, there is nothing. Well, no, I guess dissent, resistance, these are nice things. I'm not in my positive mood, so I can't.
Yeah. I experienced the conflict. The conflict being, how do I say this? There was some person that's a little bit famous on Twitter or whatever that said the reason she's doing this work, whatever this work is, I won't even say what it is. It doesn't matter.
Who, me or someone?
No,
else?
not you. No,
Oh,
just
okay.
a woman.
Sorry. Yeah.
She said the reason I'm doing this work, something like I have to do it, and she said she doesn't like it. She's not.
Yeah. Oh,
she doesn't want to do it. She has to do it.
Yeah.
And I noticed for me, I'm actually enjoying this, but I still have a conflict of we're talking about death.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm making jokes and making light of things, but it's a very dark subject.
It's dark, but you have to make light of things as well. It's a survival mechanism, and it is a mechanism for resistance. There's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of joy and creativity in doing this work. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't be able to get up in the morning. But I'm one of those people that hate doing this, to be honest. I know I don't seem it. People will be shocked, but I'm actually a very shy person. I'm one of those people that just hate walking into a room when I don't know people, and I have to do it all the time because of the work that I do. But I would really love not to do any of it. But it's sort of like, I guess I think all activists will understand that you have no choice really, because how the hell are you going to sleep at night? How the hell are you going to wake up in the morning if you don't? Because it is so desperate. The world is so desperate. How can you manage unless you feel like, okay, I'm trying to do something, even though you do reach stages where, like, I mean, I've had so many ups and downs, but stages where I feel it's all just useless and worthless. And of course, it's not. The reason the world has any joy in it is because of that resistance and dissent. But it is sometimes really hard to remember that.
Yeah, and some, the people that are watching us, that are, you and I, we're in a place where, what's the word everyone uses? Like, we're in a privileged environment. We're privileged.
Mm-hmm.
If we were in some of the rougher countries, we wouldn't even be doing this.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, we would. Hopefully we would. There are lots of people doing it in horrible circumstances. Like if you look at, I don't know, the Women Life Freedom Movement in Iran, the women standing up against the Taliban in Afghanistan, the women leading the Aurat march in Pakistan, for example. There are so many examples of this utter brilliant resistance.
So let me rephrase. I wouldn't even be doing this. I think they're strong. I mean, it makes sense that they would be that way. They're more desensitized to all that kind of stuff. And if I try to imagine me in that scenario, of course I'd be a different person. But I find it hard. Yeah, in my scenario, like I heard you say you've received death threats. I think I received one or maybe two, but they're not serious. If there was a serious one, credible one, I think I would be scared, even though I'm in the U.S. A couple years ago, Salman Rushdie was attacked in New York, some area in New York State. He was doing a speech, and he could have lost his life. He lost his eye. And this is 30 years after it was a thing. Like, I thought that was past history. Where 30 years ago there was a fatwa. Was it Iran?
Yeah.
Against him, and so I thought that was dead, but no, apparently it's still going. Well, and I don't know that their government said anything again, but the point is, the people that remember it are still acting on it.
Well, I think that's why there is so much fear around this issue, because you don't know when the death threat is real or not. You don't know when there are those who take it upon themselves to implement, God's fatwa or the God's representative's fatwa. And so in that sense, I think it does make things very unpredictable. You don't know. And I think that's how they actually, they survive and thrive, is with this unpredictability. You don't know when they're going to come after you. And I think it's normal to be afraid. Of course, it's very normal to be afraid. But I think, lots of things we do in our lives can make us feel fearful. If you have a child, for example, you have never felt fear greater than that. The worry of a child is just, it's, don't do it if you haven't done it yet.
I have
so
two
much.
kids. Too
Oh
late.
my God, yeah, too late. It's so terrifying, really, every time they walk out that door. But or just normal things, getting on a plane, you can feel a little worried about what's going to happen. A lot of things we do in our daily lives can be a little scary, but it is pushing through that and carrying on with life. And I think it's the same with activists. I think we do know very much that there's risks involved, potentially, but we have to carry on nonetheless. Otherwise we would all be paralyzed, even from doing basic things that are not linked to activism. And I think that fear really is, it's so easy for it to take hold. And I've seen so many people who are so afraid of such very simple things that really there's no need to be afraid of. And I think for me, that's why this movement is so important, because it's opened up the space for people to stand up and be heard when they couldn't or they wouldn't before. And I think that's something we all need, all of us who've been part of this movement, whether we started yesterday or whether we've been doing it for many years. It's in our own way, we've been opening space. And those spaces are spaces for courage and spaces for hope and spaces that they can no longer infest with their hate and their, their bleakness and violence. And so, and that's really one important way of challenging them. So I think, well done, all of us. We should pat ourselves on the back. Go ahead, give yourself a pat on the back. Everyone watching should do it too.
What's an example of that? Of something that people or some people fear, and you're saying they really shouldn't fear it. What's a small thing you're?
Well, I mean, for me, there's so many times where people won't come to people we invite to come and speak at Celebrating Dissent. You'll be surprised at how many people don't want to speak there, and how many people don't want to attend because of safety reasons and legitimate safety reasons. How many people have been asked to, they're not even ex-Muslims, they're white Westerners who want their names removed from a petition calling for an end to Sharia courts in Britain because they're worried about what could happen to them. Fear can
you mean like
really
losing their job kind of thing, or something worse than that?
Just, I have no idea what, fear of losing your job, fear of being attacked, fear of being labeled racist. I don't know, a million fears that people have.
So what do you think of this one? This was kind of new to me. I had never thought about this when I heard it. I have a friend that told me, he refuses to like, he's been on my channel but anonymously, and he doesn't want to put his face and name out there. Not because he doesn't want his parents or family to know, they do know, but because he's worried what what they're going to deal with from the rest of the world, from the other people they live with. Yeah, that's rough.
Don't get me wrong. Of course, people have a right to be afraid, and people understand their situation better than anyone else, so they know why they can say things or do things. And I think we all make a million calculations, don't we, when we say things or do things. There are a million calculations that need to be made. But I do find particularly people who have very little to lose and very little reason to fear, to be afraid, because really they should be stepping up for people who are coming from backgrounds that can't do it for whatever reason. And I find that, I mean, it's not nice to say, but, cowardice really, and not stepping up when it's needed and necessary. Though, of course, everyone has a right to make those decisions, and I wouldn't know why those decisions are being made. But I think if we had less cowardice in this world, a lot less people would be feeling lonely, and we could get a lot more done, and a lot more change happening very quick, much sooner, if
doing the kind of work
stood up.
that we're doing helps alleviate that cowardice.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I do think that it opens up a huge amount of space. I would even be so bold as to say that we have opened up the space for those who call themselves progressive Muslims, secular Muslims. I think because we are the most hated, we are the enemy, even for a lot of progressive Muslims who will criticize us for our criticism of Islam, who march in gay pride, and criticize us for marching in gay pride. But I would be so bold as to say that they are there because of us, because we've opened such a space that it has let even believers who want to question, who want to challenge, who want to, and that space is important because all they do is shrink spaces. The religious right, those in power, they shrink space, they suffocate. And we are literally, keeping spaces open and helping and allowing people to breathe. So it's hugely important. And I'm glad we're talking about this because it's reminding me of, because sometimes you need reminding, because sometimes I feel like I say things because I have to say them, because it's the right thing to say. We're going to make a change. We're going to do it. When I myself am thinking, oh my God, how are we going to do this? It just seems so impossible. And right now I'm in that stage where I feel that way. So it's kind of nice having this conversation because you do remember, and we need, I think as activists, we need to be reminded of the impact we've had and the impact we can continue to have. Yeah.
You mentioned something. If we succeed to remove apostasy laws, that doesn't only help ex-Muslims; it greatly helps Muslims.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of Muslims actually who've been sentenced to death or on death row for apostasy and blasphemy, even though they are believers, like the Qurani Muslims in Sudan, for example, who don't accept the hadith, or you've got those who are challenging Islamic dogma who are on death row or have been executed. So definitely it's again, and that's what I mean about the fact that what we're fighting for, it's interesting. Gita Sahgal, who's this amazing Indian secularist, she was saying that she always thought that it's going to be the progressive Muslims who are going to bring this challenge and open up the space, but she found that it's the ex-Muslims who've done that, because really it's those questions are very difficult for believers to raise, particularly in the climate that we're in, because of the strength and power of the religious right, and the fact that you are shunned and removed, and isolated and ostracized, and that's the good part, if you question. And because we are ex-Muslims, it is something that we have been able to do in a way that they hadn't, and now of course we're seeing a lot more of progressive Muslims, secularists who are speaking up, and they're not thanking us, but they will eventually, or so I hope.
Well, one way any particular Muslim might realize that they need to thank us is after they've become an ex-Muslim. That's one way. But yeah, you're right. You gave other examples, which is there's many places or situations where a self-proclaimed Muslim who honestly believes they're a Muslim will be seen as an apostate simply because another Muslim doesn't agree with this first Muslim's conception of what Islam is. Which is like saying, well, I mean, I think the theology says, obviously there's one Islam, but in effect, there is as many versions of Islam as there are number of Muslims who have ever lived. So, and that means there isn't just one definition of Muslim or ex-Muslim or apostate. There's many. There's an arbitrary line between them. And that's like saying literally every Muslim, by some definition of Muslim, is an apostate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do think you're right. I mean, religion or belief is a lived experience, isn't it? And this is very much an argument against what the far right says, because the far right often says, oh, the Muslims, they're all like this. They all want this. They all want the burqa. They all want Sharia courts. And they're coming into our Christian Europe and ruining it. I mean, Christianity in power did very similar things to what Islam in power is doing. But the point that needs to be made is that Islam, religion is a lived experience. And, when I was a Muslim, when you were a Muslim, when Haram Doodles were, Veil Rose was a Muslim, I'm seeing their names now, I don't think they were beheading people and demanding execution for anyone who didn't drank water during Ramadan. I mean, no, and that's the whole thing. Our parents still don't want us dead, and they're Muslims, so I think that's very important to realize that there is this lived experience and religion. I mean, I didn't even read the Quran when I was a Muslim. It's just a lottery of birth, isn't it? Where you're born, you get labeled something, which is why we started the whole ex-Muslim movement too, is to say, stop labeling us. Stop fucking calling us Muslims. We're not.
That's something interesting. I've seen you say that a lot. I don't know that I've ever experienced that. I think I live in a sort of bubble. I don't know that I've ever been confused for a Muslim. But I wonder, is that because I'm kind of whitish looking, or
maybe now ex-Muslims are so well known that people don't. No, I'm kidding. I doubt that's the reason. Must be your bubble. But I did want to say this also. Sorry to add to this. I think this point is important. Is about the sort of homogenization of community. Where Muslims are seen to be a homogenous community, and ex-Muslims are seen to be a homogenous community, and we're not. We are together because we are fighting for the right of apostasy and blasphemy, and for civil rights for those who are atheists from Muslim backgrounds, but we are not a community. There are ex-Muslims who I would not want to be associated with outside of the fight for our civil rights, who defend genocide, who defend anti-migrant policies, who defend, a ban on Muslim migration, and of course we all have a right to our beliefs. But what I mean is that we are a community in protest and not a community in identity. And I think that's hugely important for us to recognize that. I don't want to be lumped in with every ex-Muslim. I'm sorry, I don't, but I will fight for the right of ex-Muslims to be apostates and blasphemers and live to tell the tale, in the same way that lots of Muslims don't want to be lumped in with, those on their far right. So these distinctions are hugely important. But also this importance of empathy, isn't there? That even though there are ex-Muslims who support genocide, I still recognize their right, their rights, and also their humanity. And I think that is difficult. I know when you disagree so vehemently with people, I do feel that very often. But how do we continue to see each other as people, even when we disagree vehemently?
one way that I empathize with those people that you just mentioned, ex-Muslims who are for genocide, you said. First of all, they wouldn't use those words.
Yeah,
they don't
of
think
course.
it's genocide, probably.
Of course, yeah.
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 What was I going to say? They've been fooled by propaganda. I've been fooled by propaganda. So that's how I empathize with other people that have been fooled by propaganda. And in that particular topic, I think that topic has more propaganda around it than any other topic.
True.
Or at least top 5.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to be fooled by it.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? I mean, I also I have this, you know, I do give all this you know, I keep talking about empathy and this and that, but I know in my own life there are politics and people, because we have to make a distinction between people and politics, don't we? And that's and even people and their beliefs, because just because someone's a Muslim doesn't necessarily mean that they want an Islamic State. Just because someone's an atheist doesn't mean that they are not misogynists or not homophobes or whatever. But I, you know, in practice, I do find it quite difficult to separate sometimes on things that I find really, you know, I have, for example, a family member who is pro-Iranian regime, who promotes the Iranian regime. I'm sorry, but I can't have her. I can't look at her, and I can't be in a family gathering with her. And I keep thinking, but what am, you know, I keep telling people separate the politics from the person, and it is difficult. I mean, you know, it's definitely very difficult.
Well, one reason we need to keep having those conversations with those people is they're not gonna change without people like us, without them hearing what we say. So we'd have to stay in those conversations.
Yeah.
A couple of things. You mentioned, you know, we shouldn't be homogenizing people.
Yeah.
And then you said, you know, even ex-Muslims as a group, we're not all the same. Even ex-Muslim atheists as a group are not all the same. I would just go further and say every single person is different. I don't think there's ever been two copies or two human beings that have the same set of ideas, even like core ideas. And going along with that, you mentioned Sharia law before, or people wanting it or whatever. If somebody says, I want Sharia law, that doesn't mean he's the same as the other people who claim I want Sharia law. For one thing, those two people making those two claims, maybe one of them has no idea what Sharia law is, while they're still saying I want Sharia law.
But also, I think it's linked to power, isn't it? Because you can have and linked to organization and political organization. So, for example, if you have a neighbor who hates migrants, well, fine, you might want to see him or you might not want to see him. But then if you have those, Tommy Robinson, who's organized, for example, in the English Defence League, who's created the English Defence League to you know, rally in front of asylum centers and try to burn them down, these are two different things. So I think it's the same with Muslims who might say, well, you know, I support Sharia law, versus the Islamist that is trying to impose Sharia law via a political movement. It's a very, very different thing. And I think that's when you're dealing not with individuals, but you're dealing with movements and states and political power.
I have a broad question for you. So first I'll speak about it from my context. I've been watching a lot of your content, and you say something that is new to me, which is what is it? So I think I heard it before, but I didn't really understand it till I saw what you said about it. When people leave Islam, become ex-Muslims, they can fall into or start listening to people that have a certain set of views that we might call far right. And after hearing you talk a lot about it, I'm like, okay, well, that happened to me. So I'll just say what I mean by that, how it happened to me. Well, I was following Ayaan Hirsi Ali for a long time and not noticing the far right views that you're talking about. And also Tommy Robinson and then Douglas Murray. I recently found out that Douglas Murray, his views about Israel and Palestine, and I saw him on a podcast with Joe Rogan. That little, the first half hour of that podcast made me realize, oh, this is just propaganda. And then the Ayaan Hirsi Ali one, I still didn't see that one till even after she became Christian. I still didn't see it. I started to see it when it was the individual ideas that they supposedly have, or that they do have, that you're educating people on. So as an example, issues related to immigration, profiling, or seeing an undocumented person different than a documented person. These kind of things are, well, the far right sees them one way, and then everybody else sees it a different way. And I agree with you on all those things. Well, I mean, there's stuff that I don't understand, so I can't say that I agree. But in the Tommy Robinson case, I remember watching his documentary. This feels like a year or two ago. It's a 5-part documentary. I watched that. I didn't rewatch it again, but I'm trying to remember what I saw, and I can't figure out what it is that is far right about him, except for, I think you said something that maybe the one of the main points. If you're somebody that criticizes Islam or what Islam is doing or Muslims are doing in your country, but then you're not criticizing the same kind of thing happening in your own group, like let's say you're a Christian, then that is a kind of thing that's a problem, right? Is that what's the main beef with Tommy?
I mean, look, I think the thing with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, with Douglas Murray, with Tommy Robinson is that they are anti-Islam because, frankly, they hate Muslims. And I am anti-Islam, not because I hate Muslims, but because I think it's a horrible idea. I think all religions are a horrible idea. I recognize that people have a right to have whatever belief they want, however absurd it may seem to me personally. That's part of freedom of conscience and expression. But I don't think that people's human rights are dependent on whether I agree with their beliefs or not. And I think that people like Tommy Robinson and Ayaan Hirsi Ali and Douglas Murray believe that people have rights based on whether they like their beliefs or not. It's as simple as that. Because for them, it is the sort of, if you've read, I did a review of Ayaan Hirsi Ali's book, Pray, for the Evening Standard. I suggest, if anyone hasn't seen it, to just search Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Pray, Maryam Namazie. And if you look at, for example, just her book is so telling, and it's just such a textbook on this sort of far right view of the other. And the other are the Muslims, the migrants. In her book, for example, she says there are 4 types of Muslims. This in itself should give you some sort of, alarm bells going. And they're either, gosh, I wish I could, if I can find, because this is so, if you don't mind, let me just do a search for it.
Yeah.
Because I just want you to know what she says the 4 types of Muslims are. Evening Standard.
Well, just to clarify, she's saying there's 4 types of Muslims, and we're saying there's as many types as there are human beings.
Yeah. So, here it is.
With her saying there's 4 types.
If you just do Evening Standard, so she says, where is it? Okay, so she says the migrant men from Muslim majority countries are different than native born. And she puts them into 4 categories: adapters, who are a minority, she says, medicine types, fanatics, and coasters. And those are presumably those who are on welfare. So, I mean, again, it's this idea, this dehumanization of masses of people because of this lottery of birth that we all recognize. We don't choose where we are born, and the stigma that comes with that. So I think it's this. If you look at Tommy Robinson, for example, his there are lots of people who say, well, you guys, you're not saying that you're saying the same thing. No, we're not. We're not saying the same thing. Yes, I'm against U.S. militarism, but I'm not saying the same thing that Hamas and Hezbollah and the Islamic regime are saying. We're not the same. We're not the same. I'm anti-military U.S. militarism because I don't believe that you should bomb people into submission. You should murder them for your politics. You should annihilate cities and eliminate people because they happen to be the wrong type of people. In the same way, I'm opposed to Islam and Islamism, but that doesn't mean I'm opposed to all Muslims and that I'm opposed to rights that refugees and Muslims should have. So I think it is about that sort of why we're doing what we do, and what our aim is. Is our aim that ex-Muslims are superior to everybody else, fuck everybody else? Or is it that we're all human and we want equality and we all want to live with dignity and we all want to have respect and rights as human beings? The different ways of looking at it. And Ayaan Hirsi Ali has become a Christian, by the way, and why is that surprising? Of course it's not surprising, because it is. She and Douglas Murray and Tommy Robinson, they all have this view that we are living in a period of clash of civilizations. But it is really the clash of the civilized versus the uncivilized, and they are part of that uncivilization. They are part of those that are promoting a religious right politics of hate and violence and despair. They have no problem with religion's role as long as it's their religion and not Islam. They have no problem with, sexual violence, for example, that priests commit against children. They're only concerned about grooming of migrant men against white girls, but not when it comes to, the mass rape that's happening in the church, for example, over decades. They don't have a campaign about that. They don't even call it grooming. Do you know what I mean? So it is, I think, this idea that they see a problem only when it comes to Muslims, only when it comes to Islam. One, you can't generalize people like that. And two, you're concerned about something. We are concerned about Islam primarily, but we are also concerned about the loss of abortion rights in the United States by the Christian right. We are also concerned about the loss of rights under a Hindutva regime in India. We are also concerned about the murder of Muslims by the Buddhist right in Myanmar. So I think that is the fundamental difference between my politics and theirs. I mean, everybody has to make a decision on where they stand with their politics. But for me, the human being is center, and I am not going to legitimize and be silent with the murder of people who are not part of my in-group just because they are not part of my in-group.
Yeah, and to be clear, they wouldn't describe what they're doing in the way you are. They would probably put it in different words, but that's your determination.
Well, the Islamists also say Islam is a religion of peace. Bush said he attacked Iraq to bring women's rights. Well, I'm sorry. You can say whatever the fuck you want to say, but it's your actions that count. And
Yes.
If your actions mean that asylum seekers are being set alight in asylum centers, and if your actions mean that you are gathering vigilantes to shoot at refugees, who, by the way, under international law have a right to seek asylum and protection, and even if they didn't, they would still have that right, in my opinion. If you are doing that, your actions speak loud. Don't tell me Islam is a religion of peace. Don't tell me that women have more rights under Islam because I have eyes and I have a brain and I have ears. And so please don't tell me that your politics is not one that hates Muslims and hates migrants, because we see the result of your politics. When Tommy Robinson organized his fascists to come out on the streets against migrants, I have a drumming group. People were afraid to come to the drumming group that day. That is what they do. It's no different from the politics of the Islamists. It's based on fear, it's based on hate, and it's based on violence. Yes, they don't have the same power, but they did during Nazi Germany, and we know what happened there. So please don't tell me they don't have the same power. They're not killing as many people. Well, Islamists don't kill as many people as U.S. militarism does. Doesn't make it better. Doesn't make it more acceptable. Hamas didn't kill as many people in its attack on October 7th. Well, I don't care how many people. It's not we're not doing a lottery of, how many people are killed. This is worse. This is better. No, I'm sorry. For those people killed, their lives matter. However many or however little it is. And so I think for me, that politics is reprehensible. It's hateful. And I can see it because for me, I don't understand how ex-Muslims don't see it really, because it's that same hate that has been targeted against us is now acceptable when it's done against Muslims. How can you not see the equivalence here? For me, I find it mind-boggling, really. Let's say.
Well, I think part of it, this is a general thing, is, I think we can hear a far-right view, not recognize it as far-right, and also not even understand it. So then just agreeing with it doesn't mean you have a far-right view, because you misunderstood it. So
Sure.
As an example of something on the other side of things, and related to profiling, I saw you on an interview with the podcast, Sam Harris podcast.
Oh gosh, don't
And
mention
you guys
that.
talked about profiling.
That was a disaster. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I got so I think I got more hate ever from that podcast than any other time of my
Really?
life.
Well, okay, well,
except for the monarchists now, maybe.
so what one main discussion point you guys were talking about was his conception of profiling, and you're against profiling.
Yeah.
He was trying to get from you what you mean, or what you would be willing to do, or whatever. What I understood from you was, well, we can't go by a person's stated beliefs. We would have to go by their actions, like if they committed a crime. And I think the reason, or one big reason, you can't go by their stated beliefs is just because somebody says they believe something doesn't mean they actually believe it. And just because they say something doesn't mean it means that thing in their head. Like an English sentence is not a one-to-one relationship with the thought in your head. So if I say the words, I believe in Sharia law, and 10,000 Muslims say that, it could be 10,000 different positions on what that sentence means. So we can't profile on beliefs. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, but it's also, I think you mentioned that you had watched my interview with Kenan Malik, who is this brilliant left academic writer. If you go on Bread and Roses' YouTube channel and just Google Kenan Malik with my name, you'll see the interview. And there's some really important points there on this issue. And one was he mentions a security, someone who is a security expert, who was explaining that if you profile based on race, that there is a 1 in 80 million chance, for example, that you will find a terrorist. But if you profile on behavior, you're much more likely to get positive results. And if you look at, and I think this makes a lot of sense, because if you look at a lot of, let's take terrorist attacks that have taken place in Europe, for example, practically all those people have been known to the security apparatus, however you say it. They've been known, and it always makes me scream. I'm like, yes, he was known. Yes, he was, there were a lot of complaints about him. Yes, there was all these things that he had done to show his affiliation to the Islamic movement. And I think, again, that is for any sort of political behavior and organizing, it's key, because terrorism is part of that sort of political activity, isn't it? It's individuals just don't go and put bombs for no reason. They're part of, even if they're acting on their own, they see themselves as part of a political movement that advocates that sort of violence, and also that sees no one is innocent. You know, no one in Israel is innocent because of Israel, because of the government. Likewise, you know, they'll put a bomb in a discotheque, or they'll put it on a train because or they'll bomb they'll fly a plane into the World Trade Centers. No one is innocent. And it's the same politics of the Israeli far-right state. No Palestinian, not even a baby, is innocent. They're going to grow up and be a jihadi, you know. So that's the mentality. No one is innocent. So civilians are fair game. And that, you know, and in that world, you know, nobody makes it out alive, because there are no innocents at all in this equation. And so I think behavior, going back to the issue of profiling, behavior is really key. And if they put their resources into stopping profiling, there's a lot of racism behind profiling as well, that makes minority communities feel like they don't belong, that they're other. A lot of search, what do they call it? The search and something, there's a word for it. Menopause brain.
Yeah,
I'm thinking strip and search, but it's not strip and search,
isn't it? It's
no, it's
anyway.
Search and search. I have no idea.
I don't know.
So so there's, if you know, but a lot of these politics, let's be clear, you know, we are living in a world which is based on profit first. It is a capitalist world, and for profit, you do need divisions between people. It is the whole idea of divide and rule. Search and seizure. Seizure. Stop and frisk.
Search and seizure.
I can't speak English anyway. Yes, all of these. But we are living in a world where division is very useful for profit. And in a sense, creating minority communities that don't feel they belong is very good for keeping wages down, stopping the poor and working class from organizing, and all of the above. So I think it is useful, which is why I would say they continue doing things like stop and frisk or whatever, when there's very little evidence that it is useful. But it's very good for creating those divisions and keeping people down, controlling people, stopping them from organizing.
I wanted to mention a point here about Israel-Palestine and the rhetoric around it from the Israeli side. And maybe that's even wrong to say it, because there's lots of Israelis that are, of course, on the right side of this.
Definitely.
But the Israeli government, or at least the current administration, when they talk about Gaza and also West Bank, I never hear them saying ex-Muslims, that they exist. I don't hear them saying Christians or babies born yesterday who have nothing yet.
Mm-hmm.
They homogenize by not even mentioning the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
There's and you hear words like even the babies are Hamas.
Yeah.
And this seems like just the most extreme version of all the other things that I've seen before. It's weird that it happens like this, and I don't know. This same kind of bad logic, I think, doesn't happen in a lot of other areas, and I think mostly because there isn't propaganda in lots of other areas.
I mean, actually, I would differ with you. I would think it happens all the time everywhere. Do you know what I mean? I think this is actually their politics of divide and rule. They did it all over the world, and now they're doing it in their own countries as well. And it is the sort of, you divide groups into homogenized communities. You let the parasitical imams and mullahs, for example, rule over the Muslim community. You don't need to worry about citizenship rights. You don't need to worry about them organizing across class, for example, and human need, and you reduce people's demands to religious ones. And that's one of the best ways of controlling people, at least in our context. So I think it's something that we see all across the board, the dehumanization that happens. You know, if you're a migrant, if you're a refugee, if you're a minority, if you have a different belief, all across the board, if you're a different nationality, if you're a different race, if you're a different sex. I mean, it's just constant bombardment in very subtle ways. I think the difference now is that that subtlety that was very often, it was so subtle that I think a lot of people didn't notice the fact that we live in a system that puts profit before human welfare. It's now naked for everyone to see. I think the whole idea of democracy as rule for the people by the people is complete crock of shit. And we can see that now. You know, it's there for us to see. I mean, the time is running out and there's so much to discuss. But I mean, I'm a strong believer in democratic politics, of course, but what I mean is democracy as we see it now, which is really the rule of the ruling class and the capitalist class against everybody else, the 99%.
Yeah, we don't really have good democracy.
No, yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go to break now, and
yes,
we'll have Sam with us. Thank you, Maryam,
for having me, and thank you to everybody who was here. And yeah, I'll stay on and listen in other conversations.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.